All right, welcome to the Refinery, everyone. It is Tuesday night, September 30th, 8:30 Central Time, or Texas time, as the world should revolve around Texas, which I think mostly it does. Anyway, I'm Leslie, and we are here with Ryan, JD, Felicia, Corey, and Andy, and we're going to talk about conservative messaging. Um, Big topic that 5 weeks out of the midterm election, big topic that we need to kind of, I think, talk our way through is the concept of party unity. I mean, we have so many different factions of conservatives and libertarians that do and don't identify with the Republican Party, and we all at one time or another have a heartache over the idea of just vote for the Republican candidate. And when is it time to be philosophical, and when is it time to be based on the philosophy of the party and principles driven, and when is it time to just go with the party answer? And I think many of us have come down on the idea that earlier in the year was time to be discussing the principles of the party and to be voting for and promoting the best conservative out there, and that now that our next choice is on November 4th, the decision between Republican and Democrat, the primaries are over. It's time to really do get in line and get behind the Republican candidate and get him elected. And to that end, Andy has written two really fabulous articles, and part 3 is coming. He based it on the 7 habits of highly effective people or highly influential people, whatever it was, Stephen Covey's 7 habits thing. Obviously, I don't remember the full name of the book, and he turned it into 7 habits of highly effective conservatives. So, Andy, give us an overview. We'll have links in the story, links to the articles in our YouTube videos and all that stuff.
Did I talk about the first 3 last time or not? I forget. Okay.
I don't think you did.
Really quick, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is by far and away the most successful program for turning around organizations and for uniting organizations, for also turning around people's lives. It's simply been by far and away the most widely used and successful in that regard. The habits themselves are, each habit is something they build upon one another. You have to start with the first one and move your way through. And I know a lot of us hear that and go, ew, self-help, I don't want to hear that, it's really awful. These aren't like that. These are easy to follow, they're fun, and you feel very free and empowered and excited without being preached at. I just love them. The first habit, should I go through the habits really quick and do a quick overview or no?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Assume no knowledge on the part of your listener.
Okay. As long as you assume no knowledge on the part of the speaker, that way we're even. Actually, I was qualified as a facilitator in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the first habit is the most important. It's called be proactive. And what that means is this: you constantly hear, look at the division you see in the conservative movement. It's always somebody saying, I can't unite with them because of what they did, because of what they're doing, what they did in Mississippi, what they're doing, or these Tea Partiers, they won't listen no matter what. And it's constantly, it's the language of I can't. And why? Always based on what somebody else, some external force is doing to you. This gets to get a little psychological here. This kind of gets back to the whole nature versus nurture thing. We always talk about, what programs us more, our nature, our genetics, or the nurture, all the experiences in our life, like how we were raised and everything acting on us until now. And we think that those two combine and make us act the way we act today. That's why I have a short temper. I can't help it. That's why I eat too much chocolate. I can't help it. That's why I'm an alcoholic. I can't help it. And what the 7 habits tells you is, wait, there's a much more powerful factor. Those are factors, nature, nurture, but there's a much more powerful factor, and that is choice. See, what matters most is not how you were born or all the things that have acted upon you since then. What matters is what you choose to do with all that input. What matters is what you choose to become. What matters is what you choose to be in any situation. So the first, you see, when we're not proactive, we're reactive. We're controlled by the circumstances. Whatever happens, we just react. We let it control us. And what we see a lot in the conservative movement is we see people lashing out in anger and negativity and rage. What they're doing is they're letting others control them. For instance, I hear people say, Mitch McConnell said we're going to beat all those Tea Partiers in the primaries, and that got out there. And you see a lot of people use that as their excuse. Well, I can't work with him. I'm not going to work with him. I can't work with them. Yes, but you're helping Democrats. It's going to hurt you in the long run. You know that. Doesn't matter. I can't. I'm helpless. I can't rise above it. Yes, you can. See, Mitch McConnell doesn't control you, either by doing good things or bad. You control you. You're not controlled by your programming, and you're not controlled by the situations in life hitting on your keyboard now, because you're not a computer. You're a person who chooses your own way. That's be proactive. The second habit is called, and the first one's the longest. The second one, they get quicker. The second one is begin with the end in mind. Now that you've realized, hey, I'm free. I choose what I'm going to be in this situation. Then imagine what you want to be in that situation, whatever it is. At the end of this situation, at the end of this interaction, at the end of this day at work, if I look back on it, what would I be? How would I be proud of myself? What would make me feel good? How would I have acted that would be good? Okay? Write that script mentally, really quick. Imagine yourself doing what you wish you'd do. Become the person you want to be. So begin with the end in mind. Set a goal and shoot for it. Well, obviously, politically, the goal is we need to win. If we don't win, the losers will never govern. The winners govern the losers. And as we've seen with Barack Obama, the repercussions of that are disastrous. So we have to win. That's the goal. We can unite. We're not helpless, and we have to win. The third habit is organizing that. Okay, so first you set your goals. Then it's called put first things first. That's the third habit. First one's be proactive. Second one, begin with the end in mind. And the third one is put first things first. Okay, now that you know the goal, what are the big steps that you have to take? Stephen Covey uses a great illustration. I mentioned this in the writing, where he puts a few jars on a table, and one has these big rocks in it, and the next one has much smaller rocks, like pebbles, and the next one has like gravel or sand, very small. And he asks this person, then he puts another empty jar on the table, and he asks this person, okay, get all the rocks from all these three into that jar, and it looks impossible. And they struggle to do it. And then he shows them how. And the key is put the big rocks in first. Then you put in the much smaller rocks, and they sift down around the big rocks. You just shake the thing, and it goes down. And finally, you put the sand on top, and when you shake it all down, everything fits in. Well, that's true of our lives as well. How many people, and for those who are a lot younger than me, you may not relate to this, but how many people who are in their 40s, 50s, and so forth, they had big things they wanted to accomplish in their life, and now it's 2-3 decades later, and they realize they were so busy on all the little things that the big things went completely undone, and their life is not fulfilling any of their purpose. They set that goal, what mattered in life. I want to become this. I want to do that. I want to be much closer to my kids. I want to move up the ladder at work. I want to become this, whatever. And none of it ever happens, and they realize, my gosh, I spent all this time sticking in the little rocks first, not spending time in the big stuff. By putting first things first, you're able to reach your goals that you set in habit 2 far more effectively. In the conservative movement, that means that we have to put first things first, which means we have to unite us and draw others. We can't major on every little issue and be a one-issue voter. If I don't get my issue, we're all going to divide. Hypothetically, if you had all these people, you have the people, let's say, who are like me, very strongly pro-life, and they say, okay, if the candidate's not pro-life, I won't vote for him. Okay, and the next person says, if the candidate fudges on amnesty, I won't vote for him. And the next one says, if the candidate isn't 100% pro-gun, I mean, if they even want background checks, I won't vote for him. And you list off 10 or 12 issues. Guaranteed, in that 10 or 12 issues, almost every candidate's going to fall short on 2 or 3, which means no matter what, you're going to have sections of conservatism stay out of the race, and you'll lose. Because you didn't put the big rocks in first. And the big rocks are, we have to unite us and draw others to us. See, you put in little rocks, made those more important, and you lose every election by doing that. And we had 10 guys, or mostly guys, in the last presidential debates trying to win. And I keep telling people, we didn't lose because Romney was our candidate. We would have lost no matter which one was, because no matter which one was, vast sections of conservatism would have stayed home, not voted. That was basically the first article, was those 3 habits. The second article, those 3 habits unleash you as an individual. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first. The second 3 habits unleash us as in our relationships. So habit 4 is think win-win. There are 2 controlling ways you can think, and that's think win-lose, where I win and you lose. I want to win in this interaction. Or I lose, you win. That's victimhood. And as we all know, a lot of people try to control their settings through victimhood. Think win-win is much tougher than that. What think win-win is says, hey, I'm proactive. I'm not beaten. I'm not controlled. Okay? I will not settle for less than a win for both of us. And I believe that can happen. Now, to make that happen, you got to go to habit 5, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And in that habit, obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. Always seek first to understand people, then to be understood by them. And I tell a story about how I do that at work. People know me a lot at work by the fact that I can bring down situations and make people feel happy very quickly. And the reason is I listen to them and I hear them. And here's the key. When I hear their point of view, even if they're a very angry customer, maybe even a drunk, I seek first to understand where they're coming from. I look at them and basically say, and I try to restate back to them what they're saying better than they can say it themselves. I try to state their side better than they can. Now, what if we did that in conservatism? You know, Tea Party and establishment are arguing. What if they had to first start? Okay, you two can argue, but first I'm going to require you to try to state the opposition's viewpoint for them better than they can say it themselves. You'd be amazed. Just putting yourself in the position of having to try to state it better for them than they can completely changes your perspective. And by the way, most importantly, it makes them feel understood. It makes them feel heard. It's called, Dr. Covey calls it giving emotional air. They act like they can suddenly breathe. I've thrown out drunks, angry drunks, who thanked me for my kindness and the respect I showed them. Many times, okay, at the casino. I've done that. Why? Because they'll tell me why they're furious, and I'll say, well, sure, you think this and this. Yeah, and before you know it, they're, yeah, and they're relating. So that's habit 5. And the 6th habit is called synergize. And what that is this. Most people look at when 2 people work together, they feel, well, the efforts of one person plus the efforts of another person will equal the production of 2 people. That's how we see it. That's a very limited way. By the way, that's a socialist way of looking at it. Notice that it's a closed system. Or they may grudgingly say, well, you're just compromising. 1 plus 1 equals 1.5. It's midway. Synergy means 1 plus 1 equals 3, 7, 20, 10,000. It means that it means that our differences actually make us stronger. You see, when we are opposed to one another, our differences are a weakness. They represent division. When we are united, our differences represent diversity, a good kind. and it totally changes our outreach. JD and I have very different beliefs. JD and I can reach completely different people. All right, Common Core, that's funny. JD and I can reach completely different people. Because of JD, a whole new group of thousands of people are reachable for me, and vice versa, because of our interaction, because we work together as a team. Rather than be divided, we're diverse. Does that make sense? So those are the first 6 habits. And finally, the 7th habit is called sharpening the saw. And all that means is this: those first 6 habits, that you don't just do them once. You do them over and over and over. You turn them all into habits. And just like bad habits like alcoholism or maybe snapping at people, maybe you've got a short fuse, a temper. Remember, we always feel helpless in these things. You're not. You're never helpless. Never. Never allow the weaknesses of others to provoke you. Never allow the weaknesses of others to control you. You control you. Envision a better way that you would respond in that situation that has always controlled you, that has always set you off in the past. And then act that way. Create a new pattern. Create a new habit in that situation. You control the situation. And before you know it, that person who always got to you doesn't. And you can get to them by listening to them and seeking first and stating their point for them and shocking them by giving them emotional air. Habit 7 is renewing daily, all 7 habits. It's kind of like working out a prayer. You don't just do it once. You do it all the time. So that's kind of a short overview just off the top of my head of the 7 habits. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I mean, it's actually a very long book, so I hope it's quick enough.
Condensed it pretty well.
I like the fact that it, once you get to point number 7, you're talking synergize, and you're reminded, yes, this is a corporate thing because we're talking about synergizing the whatevers. And then we get to the violence because we're talking about saws. So it's good stuff.
All good things have violence.
Absolutely. You got to sharpen that saw because, well, we're just going to leave the reasons up to you, the successful habit person. And I really do like the sharpen the saw aspect of it because, I'm going to try it and I'm not going to be perfect at it. Well, that's okay. You'll get it better the next time, and you keep trying it and you keep practicing and you keep practicing, and then it becomes intuitive. And the great thing about this kind of self-help stuff, the good lasting self-help stuff, is that it's intuitive. Once you hear it, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Of course, I always knew that. You didn't always know it, and you didn't put it in steps 1 through 7, and you didn't make it as concrete as this, but none of it seems alien or weird to you. It's making the things that you might have done accidentally, it's going to say do these things with intent, and realize that when you've had arguments that were successful, they weren't arguments, they were discussions, and they were successful because they were win-win. It's trying to help you identify the times you've been good in the past. Well, this is why, so do more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think of the times I've done the worst, it's whenever I ignored the habits. I mean, listen to people in conservatism right now who are divided. All right, listen to those people. Listen to their language. Not just the Tea Party. We often think because the Tea Party is very vocal about their division, about their anger, because they're very frustrated. All right. Well, you know what? They have a lot of good reasons to be. But also listen to a lot of the establishment. Listen to the Christian right and the social moderates duke it out and all this. Here's the big words I constantly hear. I constantly hear the words that tell me they're being reactive, not proactive. They're allowing their anger at what others do to control them.
And we have no choice. We have to be this way because that's the only way, blah, blah, blah.
If you don't break through that lie, you can't do the rest of it. And in fact, by the way, you're not going to get forget politics, you're not going to get anywhere as a human being, developing it and learning, growing as a human being in life. if you
If
feel
you just accept the status quo and don't try to change it and take ownership of that change.
right, they don't control you. Never empower the weaknesses of others to control you.
Yeah, there has to be, and maybe this is the rude answer, but I think it a lot. I think, so what? An awful lot. When people will say, using it as a complaint or as a reason for a particular way that they do things in business or way that things are in conservatism or whatever, they'll explain this is why. And, my internal answer, I usually don't say it out loud, is, so what? Try it a different way. So what? That's the way it's always been. So what?
It's funny. I always hear the greatest skepticism from people in business. And the big skepticism comes with think win-win. They listen, they see that, and they're just like, that's idealistic. Come on,
that's capitalism, damn it.
Well, that's not the way the real world works. The real world works, dog eat dog. I'm going to get mine, and if I don't, the establishment's going to take advantage of me, and it's going to be Mississippi all over again. Or if I don't, if I let those Tea Partiers run us over in this state, my gosh, they're going to get us. It'll just be Christine O'Donnell, and we'll lose every state with candidates who can't win in this. And they're going to do this to me. They're going to do that. Newsflash, business people. Think win-win is the only realistic way to live your life. Think business. Suppose you think win-lose with your customers. Let's say you always want to get far more money out of them than the value of the product you're giving them. Right? You win, they lose. Is that gonna work? No, you'll lose your customers. Okay, go the other way. Be a martyr. Think lose win. Give away the store. Right? Is that going to work? No, of course not. The only way that works is win-win. You have to, in everything, I don't care if you're selling the Big Gulp at a 7-Eleven outside of New York State, or if you are, or if you're selling a car, or if you're purchasing a multi-million-dollar business. If you don't, give value for value, if you don't seek win-win, you're not going to have a lasting arrangement. That can work if you're just trying to take a sucker one time and you don't want a lasting relationship. But hey, guess what? In politics, you must have lasting relationships. It has to. Otherwise, the other side wins. It's totally realistic.
So, JD, do you have something to say? I see you. Okay. I wanted to take a minute to work on that synergy and kind of get your guys' opinion on something I've been thinking about the last few days. I was wondering how to talk to someone, and I'm going to give an example and have you guys hopefully help me figure out the best way to handle it. All right, hold on just a second.
I love it when that happens. That's the best.
All right, so real quick. Andy always says that I'm for any choice, for your right to make any choice as long as it doesn't infringe on my ability to choose or the choices of someone else. So what if you could make an argument against alcohol, supporting prohibition, for example? There are 10,000 people killed by drunk drivers every year in the country. There are a ton of people who have been abused by an angry drunk, an angry dad that comes home drunk or something like that. And I make a case that that alcohol is taking away the right of those kids to choose or the right of those people who are driving, or it impairs other people. Now, we know prohibition didn't work. Millions of people use alcohol every day in responsible ways, don't do anyone any harm. So how do you go at something like that? How do you talk to that person, talk back that person that wants to control a personal behavior, even if they do have a somewhat valid point that this is taking away the rights of others?
Do you want me to address that, or I'd be happy?
Yeah, just anyone.
Well, first of all, I would tell them, I don't think you're trying to control people. You sound just fine. Okay, I wouldn't draw that conclusion. But you are simply saying, I do believe that these choices are taking away the choices of other people. Therefore, I want those choices taken away. Okay? And society has to look at every single kind of narcotic or drug, right? And decide at what level does a drug go from being an acceptable risk to being an unacceptable risk. I mean, let's use two extremes. If you look at caffeine, caffeine would be deemed a very acceptable risk. It's because it is not instantly addictive, and it also does not destroy people's lives overnight. Now, at the same time, then we could look at meth or crack. Instantly addictive, and it turns you into an instant weapon in society very quickly in just a couple uses. You have to get it, and you will then turn to crime very quickly to get the money to do it, unless you happen to be very wealthy. So those are the two extremes. Now, society then, in between there, is going to have to put all the various drugs on a list, from the lowest addictability and potential danger to the very highest, and then decide, okay, at what point do we want to draw a line and say, okay, anything below this is an acceptable risk, anything above this is not an acceptable risk. Okay, so I would first look at this person and say, I don't think you're being mean. I don't think you're being nasty. You think it's not an acceptable risk. Somebody else does. Okay, and that's okay. I would disagree with you because I would say that while the only reason that there is an enormous incidence of bad results from alcohol is because there's an incredibly enormous number of people who regularly use it. And that adds to the higher incidence of it. But if you were to look at how often crack per person using it causes great damage, obviously it would be many, many times higher. And we'd have to then discuss it from there. Does that help at all?
Yeah, I think in that instance it helps. I see people like Rick Santorum and a lot of people on the right, and Leslie, before we went on live, was talking about a conversation that she saw on a friend's post where the conservative person was saying, I don't want to vote for the Republican in this election because the Republican's just as bad as the Democrat, so I'm going to stay home. And the Democrat wants to control my life through Obamacare or taking my money, and the conservative wants to control my life through some religious thing, making me go to this church, or making me not do this, or making me not do this, or according to their religious beliefs. And so it just kind of got me thinking of that. Seems to kind of be the vice on the right, is to want to control morals, to want to control people's bodies. So how do you talk to people on our side and convince them that, you know what, even if it might be bad for you, it might be bad for society, people still have the right to make that choice? And at some point we do have to maybe draw a line. As we saw with prohibition, it ended up being worse when it was outlawed. It started the Kennedys and started all sorts of gangs and corruption, and it was horrible. And so the war on drugs right now, is that the same thing? We have all the cartels coming. Would it be better if we legalize drugs? A lot of libertarians and a lot of conservatives that I've talked to think that might be the case. But a lot of conservatives are saying, no, we need to keep marijuana outlawed. We need to outlaw all these drugs. We need to be more careful with legal drugs and prescription drugs and harsher sentences to really stop it. There's both sides of the argument on our side, and I think it's an important thing to message because I think it is a dividing factor on our side.
Well, I think that's true, and we do get to that. Does kind of loop us around to the point of, we are not perfect. We, the conservative libertarian side of the fence, isn't perfect either. I mean, we point to the control issues with the left, where the left wants to control every aspect of your life, and the pushback is, well, but so does the right, and that is in fact true. There are security conservatives that have never seen a wiretap that they don't find worthwhile. And I think it was wiretapping that was this guy's issue, because everybody on the right was all, pro-Patriot Act, and anything that we say we need to do for security, it's perfectly fine. And that's a bad instinct on the conservative side. That's 180 degrees, but just exactly the same bad as the instinct that says we need to ban big gulps, or the guy who is just about to be the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas, thinking that it was cool to create a law in Harris County. I don't even know if it was statewide, whatever. That it was to create a law to disallow restaurant owners from deciding to allow smoking in their restaurants. That was government forcing morality on the conservative side, and government forcing morality by Mayor Bloomberg on the liberal side. And it's bad when both sides do it. And we have to acknowledge that within our own party there is this diversity of viewpoints, and there is this sliding scale of control, and there are plenty of GOPers who go too far on the right-hand side. And that's why you see those political party charts that are, it's not right or left, it's up or down. It's libertarianism versus conservative liberal kind of thing, because it really is all about control for many of us, and we've got more of a libertarian instinct. But then that gets us to the small rocks versus the big rocks. When we're talking about the election November 4th, the Republican, in the Senate, because he's going to be one of 100. I mean, he's not going to be the dictator of all things. So one senator who has views that I disagree with, he's got a 1% voice in the Senate. And so even if he's got really crappy ideas about a few issues, if he's going to caucus with the Republicans, I would rather have him than the Democrat or the, quote, independent in Kansas who's going to caucus with Democrats. Because in the Senate, it's a numbers game, and we need to have more than 50 senators that are Republican. So the big rock on November 4th is suck it up and vote for the Republican. And then in January, when they take office, that's when we start hitting them on back off on the wiretapping, change the laws, and change the drug laws, and quit incarcerating people who don't need to be incarcerated. It's in January that we start looking at the smaller rocks, once we get the big rock in November of taking the Senate majority.
Yeah, I would also say a couple things. I mean, with the person who's upset that, I won't vote for, a Santorum type, and let's be honest, I didn't have Santorum rated highly in my group of who I was for, but I was a Herman Cain guy, so two quick things. Number one, I'd tell them, three things. First of all, I'd say, hey, I love the reason that you don't want to vote for this person. I love the reason you don't want to. You feel that they want to control people's lives in an area, and you're against government controlling lives. First of all, love the concept. I agree with it. Now, second thing though, let's keep in mind, little rock, big rocks. Everybody's got their little rocks. Okay? Hypothetically, let's say you're a libertarian, you don't like the Christian right intruding in their lives. So you say, I'm not going to vote for somebody with those moral stances. Okay. Then somebody says, well, I'm not going to vote for anyone who would legalize marijuana. Okay. Well, and third one, I'm not going to vote for anybody who is more interventionist in their foreign policy. All right. Fourth one, well, I'm not going to vote for anybody who's more non-interventionist in their foreign policy. Hypothetically, you have just guaranteed that if everybody does what you say you're going to do with this candidate, if everybody on our side does that, we are guaranteed of losing virtually every election nationwide. So we are guaranteeing Democrat supremacy, which means you will be run by people who want to control virtually all of your life. So that strategy is guaranteeing failure. I mean, the only way, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to hold this strategy, and the only way it can work is I really hope nobody else on my side does. I hope everybody else does not use the strategy I'm using. Now, is that a good strategy? I don't think so. Let's think win-win. How can we do this together? How about we look at each other and say, let's hash it out in the primaries, and whoever wins represents us that time. But the second the election's over, let's go back to discussing this issue. Let's not shut it down. And the third thing I'd say is, by the way, let's compare that Christian to the Democrats. Real simple. Does the Christian ever do what Democrats do with public schools? Do they take tax dollars from people of all beliefs and erect a school system that only teaches one side, and then force everybody's kids through a school system that only teaches their side at everybody's expense? No. They have churches. They have free will donations that are supported just by people who go to that church. So keep in mind that Christian that you're upset with, and maybe for some good reasons, that Christian is not 1% as controlling as the left is, as the teachers union is. There's nothing Christians do that in any way, shape, or form compares in their wildest dreams to taking money from everybody to finance places that teach one side and force everybody's kids through it. So keep it in perspective.
Not yet, you mean? Not yet. They're creeping on us. They're going. This whole thing is, once they get in power, those Christians, they're going to construct a Death Star and force everybody to convert. Otherwise, it's just, it's curtains for any non-converters. It's trouble.
Well,
bad stuff.
Those are the secret party plans that you can only get to if you go to thegop.com and enter in your secret Captain Marvel password to get their real plans. In public, they're not talking about that, JD. I don't think you were supposed to say anything.
I'm planning on making JD wear the dark helmet costume from Spaceballs.
Yeah.
As a Christian.
See, the funny thing about that is that the helmet would actually fit me, because it's like actual size. I think that another thing that we really need to keep in perspective here is that sometimes you're not going to move somebody who says these things, who's oh, the parties are the same, stupid stuff. That it's such a ridiculous premise, because you can clearly show the differences between the parties and what we're doing in the conservative movement for freedom, for liberty, and expanding freedom and liberty, and getting the government out of our business. But there are people out there who are not going to be receptive to that, no matter how hard you try. So something that we've talked about here before is, in those instances, you're going to want to try and push them towards another candidate. You're going to want to try and push them towards somebody that they do like, which is something that you can pretty easily do. You can probably figure out, based on what they're saying, who they might be interested in, and find a good candidate for them. Find a good candidate to get them to, so that they can support them, even if it's not in their local race, even if it's not anything that they have to do within their state. You can get them working on something that is, find a Thomas Massey, find a I guess in the opposite case, a Rick Santorum, find somebody that they can support, somebody that they will be able to get behind and campaign for and make phone calls for and support, and get them to do that, because they might not come off of that whole false dichotomy business, but they're going to be able to. We still need to maximize their value, and we do that by finding candidates for them that they will fight for, that they will work for. So that's another side to this coin that I think we should work on and we should push.
I think it's a great point.
We've kind of, since Ryan was going on a bit of a thing there, and he had to leave for story time. I think maybe now would be a good time to sort of shift into the Garrity discussion. Leslie, I know that's something that was going on in the conservative union side of things. That was an interesting discussion. I didn't really get to participate too much in because I was doing other stuff, young Republican type stuff.
You were trying to
Which
get the technology working for all of this too. So
yes, that's true. We've got other fun stuff going to happen in the rest of the show. We've got technology. It's awesome.
ooh, technology, cool. Now, Jim Garrity, who is a writer for National Review Online, tweeted out earlier today kind of it wasn't really a rant, it was a diatribe or, Twitter thought stream. And just the nature of Twitter, since it's 140 characters at a time, you type it, you hit send, you type more and hit send, and he was going one after the other, which is, when you're a blogger and you're telling a story via Twitter, it's kind of weird. It's like saying, this is an important thought that I want to tell everybody, but it's not worth me actually sitting down and composing a paragraph about it, so I'm just going to spew my thoughts. I'm not a real fan of using Twitter to communicate effectively. It's good for short bursts of stuff. And then he collated his tweets into a post, copying and pasting, and then that was shared by other people. So, I'm already not liking the whole thing, just from a standpoint of collecting your thoughts that way, and it was just rambling. But what he was rambling about was taking conservatives to task who are, I don't know, the super cons or the true cons who could never agree with, could never support Mitt Romney because Mitt Romney disagrees with this, that, or the other. Could never support this particular candidate because this particular candidate disagrees with their views on one particular issue. Garrity was saying exactly what we're saying here, but in a different manner, and it's kind of unfortunate because he has such a large audience, and then he magnified his audience by taking all of his tweets and sending it out to a post in NRO, and then that got shared everywhere. So lots and lots of people saw it. He was saying what we're saying, and he was really saying what Andy said in his 2 articles, but rather than the way Andy chose to express it, by pointing out the weaknesses or the flaws in our way, and the way that we can turn them around and turn them into strengths, and the way we can do better and correct our problems, Garrity was just kind of yelling at us. And you read it and you're like, oh, well, I hope he's not yelling at me. And, oh, I agree with him, those other people are crazy and bad. And it was just kind of a self-indulgent rant that wasn't really helping anyone. And I disagree with the thought that went, not the thought that went into it. I agree with his point, but I disagree with his method. And what's so sad is that because we have in social media such an emotion-based group of people, or emotion-based world, where if you're feeling something, you're going to click and reshare. If you're thinking, you're probably sitting there thinking. So, our target is to get people to feel. And so when Garrity posts something like that, it makes people feel, so it becomes very popular, and a lot of people see it, and a lot of people then feel, and they're all feeling either angry at each other or guilty for being the one Garrity's yelling at. And it doesn't help the conservative movement at all. So even though Garrity was saying, you need to stop that, I wanted to say to Garrity, no, you need to stop what you're doing. And that makes me feel bad because Garrity's so much better than me. I mean, he's got a public forum and all that. What am I to say?
I think that there's another thing. There's another response. It's not just guilt for oh no, I did this, I feel bad. There's the, you're going to tell me what? You're going to tell me that this is wrong.
Oh right, you pushed me. I'm going to push back.
There's the pushback. No, you're a rhino response, and that's even worse. There's nothing more nothing that wastes more time than having a you're a rhino, no, you're a rhino, true Scotsman situation that's uncontrolled, and that's what these things kind of cause sometimes if you're not careful about how you phrase them. And I think that's something that we really don't want to do here on the refinery, is try to cause that scenario. We don't want to incite those riots of talking down to people, being condescending, and say that, sure, there are people out there who mean well and think that they're helping by staying home, and think that they're helping, thinking that they're doing right by being a bunker Republican, and trying to sort of, no, I'm not going to vote for this guy because he's just going to make this mess worse. No, I'm not going to. We'll just wait it out, and then eventually someday our prince will come. We're going to have the best candidate ever show up, and we're going to have an excellent, paradise of conservatism. We don't have to fight for it. We just have to wait. We have to wait it out. We've got our buckets. We've got our tanks of water. We've got our emergency meals. We're just going to stay here, and it'll all be good.
Well, and I think that's true. Yeah, Corey calls them Rapunzel Republicans. Yes, Rapunzel, let down your long hair. I almost said let down your red hair, but that could be just because I'm a redhead. I think that anyway. But yeah, the whole thing that we're trying to do here is to acknowledge that there are Rhino Republicans, there are Tea Party Republicans, there are social cons and Christian cons and hawks and doves. And I think since we have 6 people here today, we probably have 6 different sectors of conservatism represented. But guess what? Altogether, we are that diversity of thought that makes the Conservative Party better and more effective by being different. And I'm cool with the fact that I don't agree with all of y'all on everything. And hopefully y'all are cool with the fact you don't agree with me. And you know what? If you're not, I don't really care.
No, you're wrong. You're just wrong. One thing that Garrity did not put in his National Review recap. He left out some tweets, but one of the one was, and I've seen this and I understand where he's coming from. If your plan involves, and I quote, and then after America collapses, we rise from the ashes back into power, you've lost me. That would have been very helpful to be included in the National Review, tweet roundup that he put together, because that is something that you see quite often from people in the conservative side who've given up, and they say, let it burn. I've heard that far too many times, and that is a defeatist attitude, and it's that bunker mentality. I was talking with JD earlier today. I've come across that so many times by people who have tried and who have failed and who have walked away. And I understand where they're coming from, because this is why we talk about needing a win and how do we get there and the strategy behind it. But the deal is that when those people are out there saying that thing, it is going to engender an emotional response. That is what you get when you get that from Garrity's. That was, again, reacting, as Andy said, letting someone else kind of push your buttons to the point where you react. I get it, and I do believe that's what Garrity did. But he's got a very central core point that we can't miss, I think, and that is that some people have given up. Some people are ready to walk away. And it seems to be louder on social media than in real life. And we're in a bubble of social media. We talk about our bubbles all the time. We are kind of in a bubble in social media where what we see the most influential people say or do and tweet and Facebook and whatever becomes sort of the conversation that we have. But there are so many other people out there that don't see that day to day, that aren't feeling that day to day, that aren't looking at things that way. And I think another thing that we need to keep in mind over this Those people who have given up, it's a dangerous thing if they spread that, if they spread their contagion, because what happens is usually these are people of some means as well, who have the ability to do something else, who can buy property in an isolated rural area or whatever. And I know people like this. I know people who have made that decision and come to that conclusion and have decided that this is their answer. They're just going to opt out. They're going to let other people deal with the problem. And when it's all done, then they'll come out of their bunkers. And what kills me about that is that while they're sitting in their bunker, hiding out and letting the world burn as it is, they're losing their humanity. It's the same thing that you saw in Atlas Shrugged, where John Galt and the crew sort of opted out of society rather than fight. The very people who had the best means to fight in this government that was squeezing everybody opted out one by one by one by one and left the regular people who they claimed were guilty because they voted for this. They deserved it. Sucks to be you people. We're out of here. It's the same thing. Instead of standing and fighting, they give up. And we need to address those people, and we need to put down that hopelessness with good examples of victories that we can have. And I've got one. Just last night, I was at the Harris County Republican Party, the executive committee meeting. It's the first non-organizational meeting that we had. We have a new chairman after 12 years. And in January, there was a huge backlog before the election, a huge backlog of vacancies for the precinct chairs. There was either a very low or a negative bank balance in the accounts. There was a lot of infighting and fracturing. It's 9 months later and change. The bank balance is almost $1 million. It's over $800,000. Last night we swore in, due to the efforts of a really great new vacancy committee, over a dozen precinct chairs. They filled 5% of the vacancies, I was told. Of all of the county, they filled 5% of the vacancies in just 9 months. And Paul Simpson, our chair, took office in June. And all this has happened since January to now. He's only been able to do anything since June. But this is how radically things changed. And I'll tell you that the people that were really supportive of him, the people that pushed the hardest for him, were the Tea Party folks and the folks who want change, log cabin Republicans, people that were Hispanic Republicans, Black Republicans. He had a good mix of people from all kinds of areas pushing to help him win and then govern. And young people are on his leadership team. Tea Party people are on his leadership team. Change can happen, and it can happen quicker than you think, especially at the local level. So people who are despairing of anything ever happening, they're not in a place where they're seeing, they're not involved, where they can see victory. And that's what we need to steer people towards. And that's why we need to encourage people to stay in, even when it's discouraging. I've been at this for 6 years looking for new leadership, but we finally got it. And it is so worth it almost immediately. I want people to feel that way.
You totally have to tell that story in a fun, exciting way on video and audio and stuff so that we can share that and tell it, because you hit on it early. We need a win. It's been a while since we've had anything that felt like a win. We're going to have a win in 5 weeks, but we need to stop just reading articles that say we're going to take over in 5 weeks. We need to actually do something to make it happen. Instead of being the passive people of habit number 1, we need to be the proactive people that actually have learned habit number 1. But that'll be a big win, and I think once November comes around and we do take over the Senate, which I'm pretty sure we will, we're going to see some of the negative Nancys turn around. But in the meantime, I think we have to find a way to gently help them. I don't know exactly how. And that's what I would be looking to Andy for. Andy?
Well, but I think one of the things, too, that made a difference for this particular chair, one of the things he did is between getting elected and taking office, he went around the county and spoke with people in their districts, got district meetings together, and not only got their ideas, but made this massive sort of a listing at every meeting of all the suggestions that people had and started implementing them right away. They felt listened to. Wasn't that a key thing that Andy was talking about? People felt as though he gave them time and he listened. They exchanged ideas. They worked and bounced off each other. And improvements have been made in the party from that, just from those suggestions. I can see some of them already taking effect. And the people who made those suggestions that see that are going to be saying, hey, I contributed that idea. Look at what's happening. I matter. This is hope. I can do something. That's huge. And it's because he listened. He didn't come in saying he was going to do things his way. He took all the input he could possibly stand and then some.
That's pretty huge. And as somebody who's recently gotten into the trying to go and help and talk to instead of having somebody come to me and ask me what my ideas are, I've kind of made it my business to go and tell them what my ideas and observations are. But I can say that I've been able to help recently, and I can see what it's done, and that's huge, absolutely huge. And those kinds of wins are wins that people don't even really think about. I mean, they're wins that okay, yeah, a Senate race win would be huge, but on the local level, there are definitely wins to be had, and if you can get people involved on the local level, that will energize them for the larger races for sure. Because when you get some wins on the local level under your belt, you want more, and you can do more, and you know how to do more, and you can push out even more people. So.
And like I said last week, it was this whole cooperative thing that you're seeing at the state level with the county parties, with the candidates, with the Republican women, with the auxiliaries. That cooperation was fostered at the top. That is a top-down decision to work together. But the people who made it work were all the people who subscribed to that view. And it fostered the environment in which we could do all these things. And that helps every candidate at every level.
And I'm also a Harris County resident, though I'm not active with the Republican Party because I don't like joining stuff or people. The former Harris County Party chairman was not beloved, but he was very much part of the establishment. He was backed by the establishment. He had tons of money. The victory of New Guy, and Jared was. There were a couple of elections where people were trying to dethrone King Jared, and this last one finally worked. But it was absolutely a victory of the grassroots over the establishment. And my question for Felicia, how is the Harris County Party establishment handling New Guy?
Well, okay, we need to be very clear about what establishment is in Texas, though, because it is very different.
True, very different.
Establishment is in, say, Massachusetts, okay, or Connecticut or something. Establishment in Texas is and has been for 15 years, maybe at least, very red meat, raw, bloody Republican. It is the rightest of the right, for the most part. And in Harris County especially, the leadership previous would campaign by telling everybody things were great and not really giving people the information on the ground, but just talking up Republican values and our red base Republicans. They were talking very base to the base of their social conservative, real right sort of thing. The new chairman is has a broader appeal and has drawing cooperation from people who the old chairman would not have let in to do things. It's not perfect. It's not where we want it to be exactly yet, but we're in a process to move that. But it's expanding the number of people. It's difficult, but that old establishment was in opposition to Ted Cruz violently when he was running for the Senate, which is a real strange thing if you consider what I just said about him being very, very red and very raw. But it was because there was a loyalty to David Dewhurst. So base and conservative, it gets all mixed up in Texas. But the prior chairman and others like him were talking down Ted Cruz like nobody's business. They were the biggest opponents of Ted Cruz until he won his primary. And to their credit, like good Republicans, they got on board after Ted Cruz won. But it was not without damaging some serious relationships in the meantime. From that, it was very hard for them to recover long term. And it was just the next cycle that the chairman lost his spot. But it is an establishment in that the older, slow to respond Texas Republican dynamic was in power, and now there's a more agile and more welcoming and more open and receptive to ideas center of the party now, where before there was less desire for input. Suggestions would be nodded at and then smiled at and then dismissed. Now they're actually being taken seriously. People with good ideas are actually being listened to, and more people are being involved. It's a huge shift. But I just didn't want anybody to get confused on what establishment meant.
Right, because most of the time when we talk establishment, we're talking the political animals that will compromise just to keep their position, and usually that ends up being kind of the liberal side of things. But in Harris County, our establishment was much more good old boys network. The guys who are in power, they're in charge. They do business with each other. They make sure that each other's businesses get the bond issues and get the construction contracts and that kind of thing, and have the sponsorship for the what are those brochures that come out with the ballot letters that we all get in the mail? A whole bunch of brochures telling us who to vote for in the primaries, and those are almost always made by one big company that has friends in the political establishment. And in Texas and in Harris County, since our establishment has been Republican for so long, they didn't have to compromise and be liberal. So establishment for us did not mean liberal guys. It meant kind of that scary Christian dictatorship, right-wing power control guys establishment. And it was also the kind of inflexible conservatism that takes the conservatives in Harris County for granted and doesn't see battleground Texas as any kind of threat, and yet also was losing Harris County to Democrats more and more every single year. So it was an arrogant group of establishment political cronies that thought that they didn't need to compete because nobody could defeat them, while they were getting defeated over and over and over again. And so it's awesome to have a new guy who understands the threat and wants to be nimble and recognize it and bring the Republican Party into the 21st century.
This brings me back to one concept that we've kind of skirted around and talked a little bit about in different terms. But one of the things that I find, and this is not just in Texas, but in certain pockets of political power in the country, the guy who's in power wants to stay in power of the party. And it doesn't so much matter what happens to the candidates that they're supposed to be supporting, because as long as they're still at the top of the heap, it doesn't matter if they're a losing team, they're still the top of that heap. That's a dangerous thing for a party to think like. That is a dangerous position to get in. where you are going to exclude the help of people who don't agree with you because they might make inroads into your power base. And that's toxic to conservatives and Republicans. And I see that not just having happened here, but in other places. And it is precisely what Andy's talking about in his pieces that helps reverse some of that by not viewing people as the enemy, but how can we win together? That is the only remedy I can think of for that kind of thinking.
Speaking from a place of understanding and deep knowledge, and this is not just because there are lots of trash dumps in New Jersey, although there are many, many, many people, many political groups, many Republican sort of fiefdoms that are content to be king of Garbage Mountain and stay there, not advance their territory because, hey, they're king in their little tiny side of New Jersey. So, you have these people who act like that and who are not actively trying to grow the party or try to win. They're just happy to keep the status quo. Those are the kind of guys. I mean, you run against them. You do whatever you can to fight them and get new leadership. But that is not the same thing as saying that you're not going to vote for Mitch McConnell because he's some sort of liberal. I mean, these are completely different situations. These are local issues. These are things that you can win on, and things that, these are primary discussions. These are situations that are only the party. This isn't something that's a broader issue. This isn't the nation. We're talking about the party. We're talking about the inner workings of how the Republican Party, how that works in your county, in your wherever, and there are ways to build up coalitions against that. Obviously, Paul was successful in doing it in Texas, so hopefully somehow we can figure out how to follow that lead in some of the quieter places here in New Jersey and get some action done. But it can be done. I'm sure it can.
I want to stop and pause on something here too, when you were talking about the different groups sort of vying for leadership, and we need to really make a distinction, and this might help people think through this issue of candidates I don't like and party being horrible and that sort of thing. We all could have bashed the RNC from time to time because they're, again, slow moving and slow to respond to the threat that's out there. But you have a political party whose job is 24/7, 365, from year to year to year, to build up a brand and a workforce. And then that workforce is supposed to be put into use to help campaigns. You can work for a party and a party structure and support candidates that way, rather than spending your money and your time and your effort chasing the rainbow, finding the best candidate that you possibly can. If you don't feel comfortable helping a candidate, build the ground, build the basis. If you become a person who people can depend on to get something done, to make phone calls, to donate money, to organize something, to work and volunteer, you're going to be respected no matter what. It may not be by the leadership itself, but if you're sitting there smiling every time they try to get you to shovel crap, and you have the smile on your face and you take it and you become the good guy, that other people look at that and go, wow, they've taken a lot. They show up no matter what people say to them, no matter what happens. If you become that guy, you are the good guy, and it shows up in contrast how bad leadership can be. And if you have good leadership, you're just seen as that much more valuable to the team. When you become valuable to the team, especially in a party, which is easier, by the way, than for a candidate in a campaign of a large base, like a Senate campaign or a presidential campaign, when you are working your butt off for a local party, people notice. Not only do they notice, but you get asked to do all sorts of things. And there's perks involved in that too. And the most important one is you become influential. There's no way, and Garrity says this, and he says it, of course, in a very sharp way, but nobody ever gained influence by opting out.
Yeah, I mean, well, the big thing is by doing that, you're demonstrating that they come before you. Others come before you. And that alone, when you do that, when you do the golden rule, it wins influence so quickly. And it's so funny because so many people think we see so much of the fighting and infighting, and what people are trying to do is take over, right? This group wants to take over the party. That group wants to take over the party. The reason they're doing that is because they've given up on working. They don't believe that we can. They don't believe that they can win allegiance from that group, which leaves them only the option of beating that group. And in their defense, I'll say this one thing: the main reason that they cannot win allegiance is simply because they don't know how. People aren't well trained, and that's once again going back to 7 Habits. That's why that comes in. I have been able to win an awful lot of people. I got a lot of libertarians to vote for Romney. I've gotten a lot of Tea Partiers. I've gotten a lot of people to work together. And it's just knowing the technique, knowing how to show them that they can be unleashed and do that.
Yeah, and it's getting people to go out there and participate is one of the biggest things that you can do, and being able to effectively communicate just how important and influential these things are. I mean, getting that word out there is a huge thing for this party on all levels. I don't know why it's as poorly communicated from the training standpoint as it is, but I will say that I know in my own personal experience, it's hard to find out a lot of this stuff. It's hard to find out necessarily who your county chair is, or who the right person to talk to is for this particular thing or for something else. We have kind of some issues to work out there on a lot of levels for the GOP, but that's why it's so important that we, the activists, participate and become a part of the process and go and find out all of these things and learn ourselves so that we can write the FAQs, so that we can write the walkthroughs, so that we can help people figure out how to do all of these things. And I can tell you that I have benefited a lot from having some prior knowledge there that was not mine. Some advice and some insight from a lot of people, some of which are here, in getting in the local political scene where I'm at. It's there's a lot of stuff that people don't know and that they should be able to find. But it's up to us to get it out there, to assemble it, and to package it in a way that people can understand.
Well, and you said packaging. That's a great opportunity to what's the word I'm looking? Transition. Yeah, I have words. To transition into sort of the messaging that's been going out lately.
I'm not exactly sure what you're prompting.
I thought you had some stuff queued up.
Okay, I can do that. If you give it a little bit more of an intro, I will do that. Sorry, I didn't see a cue there, a prompt.
Okay, I'll intro this briefly. There was a video that has been making the rounds. I think it's got about 150,000 views on it or something like that, and it's called "Republicans Are People." I'm disturbed that someone has to be told that, but I understand it based on what the left has done to try to dehumanize Republicans and the brand, based on their attack plan. So I think JD has worked out the opportunity to actually play it.
I agree with everything but the caring part.
I don't think we have feelings, do we?
Well, my wife does.
Icky feelings.
She has very particular feelings about you sometimes, I'm sure.
Collectively, we have feelings. I guess Does that suffice, or never mind?
Well, that video is obviously the professional funded version of something that we had been talking about before, which is getting together a Tumblr site of This Is Conservatism and just letting people contribute their videos and their stories and their ideas of what it is to be a conservative and what are some examples of being a conservative and being just kind of a normal person out in the world, because we have been otherized so much that people don't think that we like dogs or cats. But on the other hand, I look at that and think, well, that's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Who funded that? Who's doing that?
That was one of Mitt Romney's guys. I understand the concept and I understand why it was done.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it was done anywhere near as well as it could have been done. And I know that we've seen better versions of it, which we'll get to in a bit. But I'm really curious to hear what Andy and Corey have to say about that video. I know Andy said that he agrees with it except for the caring bit. But seriously, Andy, I would love some commentary on that video and hear what you think about it.
Well, there's a libertarian version, but no one's wearing clothing. Now, the Republican one, we all have clothing, and we're very decent, okay? And she took the thing away from me. Why are you doing this? Here's the upside and the downside in my view. Or if you want to, okay, I'll go first. The upside and the downside in my view. The upside is it's the idea is to break through stereotypes, because our biggest marketing problem in America for the GOP is simply breaking the stereotype. That has to happen first. We do it through basically control, showing that we don't want to control people. They do it through basically saying we relate to you and all these things. The downside is far too much Republican messaging is not winning people on the issues. We don't win people over on this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue. We don't win them over fundamentally and show them, look, Democrats want to control your lives, we don't. We don't do that. And as a result, we really don't break through. Coming through as the happy folk is great, and it does break some stereotypes. But that's not going to get them to turn away from the Democratic Party, with whom they have been brought to agree. Does that kind of make sense? So it gets them halfway across the bridge, but it doesn't even get them to take the first step the other way, further.
Yeah, I think that piece could be a good conversation starter, but you're going to need to have some answers for the questions that they're going to have. Because somebody who's not a conservative or a Republican is going to look at that and say, well, yeah, but what about? So be prepared to answer those types of questions with good answers.
I just thought it would sound so much like, please don't hate us, please.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
We really are human. We actually have lives. We're just like you. And we might be hiding around the corner. You might actually know some of us. So, you could actually do the horror movie version of that. And I'm guessing that somebody will soon, and that'll be awesome when somebody just decides to put like Stephen King horror movie music behind it.
There are Republicans in your Trader Joe's.
We are everywhere. We are Republicans.
Literally was a Republican in a Trader Joe's. Today, I was literally a Republican. I was wearing the Stand with Rand shirt in a Trader Joe's. That's wow. So yes,
wow.
that happens. That does in fact happen.
So like you're saying, that video is like totally true. It's true. It's not truthy. It's not true-ish. It's true.
It is true. In fact, one time I was a Republican in a Trader Joe's in Portland, Oregon.
Whoa.
I lived
Yeah.
to
Wow.
yeah.
I don't have my Trader Joe's open yet. I can't go be subversive and crazy.
Just go to your Whole Foods. It's much nicer. Trader Joe's, it's nah. You don't want to go to a Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is good for one thing: buying cheap alcohol.
That is true.
Well, that's,
I don't know why I admitted to that, but
I'm learning so much about you people.
anyway, I want to say that the ad did remind me of a different ad that I think is a little bit better when it comes to our brand and presenting. Because what the ad did, for better or worse, the way it was set up, it showed Republicans in different situations. It showed, oh well, we're not all the same stereotypical old white guy thing. It did kind of present it in a weird way, in a feel bad for us. There was no Sarah McLachlan. The video did not have enough Sarah McLachlan music. It was probably the thing that would have put it over the top. If we had the Eyes of the Angel or whatever that song is, like the puppies, that might have
Oh my
made
God,
it.
there's two totally different mashups that have to happen, and that's the Sarah McLachlan one, and then the horror movie one.
Right. But this one that I'm gonna put up in just a second, bear with me, is I think a better version. I would like to see the people who did this ad maybe have a shot at making one similar to the.
And when you're
you know.
watching this video, pay special attention to the chick in the red shirt.
we always have people say that because we only have a picture or this black space here, that they don't know what we look like. For everybody's knowledge, the cute girl in the red shirt, that was me.
Yeah, right.
Look,
That was Corey.
Never mind. That
But
might have-
seriously, I think that they're similar ads, but one is done well and the other one is done with a lot of money behind it and probably some market research.
Oh, well, thank
Well,
you.
I know ours wasn't the money one, so thank you.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that the one that's done well is not the one that was done with money from God knows what, for whatever group by whatever person who has focus grouped it extensively and tried to make sure that, oh, we have exactly this, and this done. We've checked all of these boxes, as opposed to what you guys did on a budget that's substantially less than what this was made for, than what the other video was made for. You got a video that was of better quality and better content and works better. The contrast is huge.
Well, I think they were targeted differently. The Republican one was saying all of the surface things that you think differentiate us. We actually have all the same surface stuff: skin color, things that we buy, and things that we go out and do, and where we shop. And the Party of Choice one was very much on the substance of the things that conservatives believe. So I think they were very different in that as well.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the focus groups, because there are some people who have told us that that's what we need to do, and there were some people who were very against us making that ad and didn't believe in it, didn't think it would make any difference, didn't think it would be liked. And so we went ahead with it without the focus group, and we just trusted our gut, and the results have just been phenomenal. So sometimes it's not about getting a million opinions, it's doing what you truly believe is the right thing to do.
The basic model was, who were the first conservatives in America? The Founding Fathers. What was the first thing they did? What was the first thing they really did when we got our independence, we got our country? They didn't send up. They set up a government and basically told us all the things they weren't going to do to us with the government. That was the whole point of limited government. That was the whole point of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It was to
It was
protect.
negative. It's a document of negative liberties, which Obama seems to think is a problem, and the rest of us think is the feature, not a bug.
Right, and so all I'm a conservative, which is the name of that ad, does is it comes at people in today's language and does exactly what the founding fathers did. It says, I'm not going to do this to you. I don't want my views taught to you. I don't want my views taught to your kids or forced on your kids in schools. My views on sex, my political views, and all this kind of stuff. I don't want this done to you. I don't want to tell you how many bullets you can carry. That's your call, not mine. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. The whole idea is stolen from the founding fathers.
Well, and if you focus grouped the founding fathers these days, that probably wouldn't pull so well anyway, unless you did it in modern language. So I think effectively you've sort of gotten around some of those stodgy tricorner hat wearing whatever stereotypes, and you've just gone to the essence of this is what a negative liberty looks like. This is you being free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it pointed out a lot of common ground between us and independents and even some Democrats.
Yeah, and that was a big deal to me. That's why I thought that those ads were very similar. Just because they're both trying to do the same thing to an extent. Obviously, the I'm a Conservative one has a stronger unity theme within the party, saying that, hey, we're all these various elements, but we're still under the same roof. But there is still diversity in that group. There's a lot of implied diversity and shown diversity there. That I think that was one of the key differences between the two ads. Is one is diversity for diversity's sake, the other one is just legitimately there. But I think that you can still make an ad that is diversity. That is trying to promote diversity, trying to show that, hey, conservatism is not just this. It's not just this box that the progressives have put us in. Obviously, we have that great ad from Darius Foster, who I wish I had this set up where I could play it back when that was going viral. But there are ways that we can push the diversity angle, and I think that ways that I would love to see sort of Harlem Shake style, have more people, have a bunch of different people try and make the same video over and over again, and see what comes out. See if we could find something that actually works and looks good and looks right and gets that point across that, hey, we really aren't this monolithic conglomeration of old white septuagenarian pervert, scary people.
Well, that was one of the reasons that we were hoping to get a wide variety of people in our ad, because by having people from different demographics, we didn't have to explain that those demographics were conservative or were Republicans. You could just look at them and see what demographic they fit and then hear what they believed. So when you do that, you kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Well, and I think the diversity message of the conservative movement has to be one that contrasts our flavor of diversity versus the liberal type of diversity. They're all about diversity in skin color and gender identity and those kind of things, as long as you all believe the exact same way, vote the exact same way, and speak the exact same way. They love black people as long as the black people don't talk like Ben Carson or Herman Cain. At that point, then you're no longer a black person, and you no longer have the good blackness that the liberals accept. Whereas diversity on the conservative side is also, not just also, but it's a diversity of thought. I mean, diversity of skin color and gender identity and all that, and religion and all of that kind of stuff is just sort of a given and it's assumed. But we more celebrate the diversity of thought, because if you have small government conservatism, the fact that you and I disagree on stuff doesn't matter because the government's not involved. Doesn't affect my life that you have a different view on something. Whereas on the Democrat side, if you and I disagree, one of us has to win because the government's going to be involved in it, and the government's going to mandate either my way or your way. So we all have to agree.
That's a very good point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I think if our diversity messaging needs to really emphasize that we're talking a whole different kind of diversity.
I agree, and I think that would be a very interesting ad to make. I think that there are a lot of issues that really don't impact whether or not you're a Republican, whatever. It's just side issues that are still relevant that you can have. That, I mean, clearly you can still be a Republican and want to have gay marriage. You can do that. That exists.
I prefer gas-powered weed eaters, and you can prefer an electric one, and the government doesn't have any say in it.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a pro-choice Republican, you can have a pro-life Republican. Those things exist.
You can have incandescent light bulbs and CFLs and both, and whichever one you want to have,
no.
have.
LEDs only LEDs.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, only when there's a law. Once there's a law, and there ought to be a law.
Right, but I think that that diversity of opinion and that sort of that's something that I would really like to see an ad of. I would love to see something that actually says, "Hey, we aren't just uniform Rick Santorums. That's not who we are. It's not just special cases."
People don't understand. They think, and look at it. Yes, the Conservative Party is both. Rand Paul and Rick Santorum can both find a home in the Republican Party.
Or Rush Limbaugh. I mean, find all of the stereotypes in the Republican Party and break them, because it really is not that monolithic thing. It's not.
And I think that could be a powerful message. Everybody's muted, so they're probably just talking amongst themselves.
The conversation was just like, okay, yeah, I guess we agree on that, so moving along.
No, I disagree. I have a different view from you. Do I still fit?
No, you get kicked out.
No, you fit. You fit, just not here.
I'm small. I fit in a lot of places.
Does that mean you're going to wear the dark helmet costume?
The helmet would be the costume.
A little 2 feet out from under it.
It would be great. We could get a lot of them, and we could play the shell game. It's just like find which one Fishy's under.
Fishy.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, no, that's rattling.
with now you've totally scrambled my point.
What we're here for, Fishy. It's what we're here for.
I know. The Leslie Park does something really great when she was talking about that diversity of thought and that everybody can fit. But more importantly, this is a great selling point for the smaller government sort of thing to people who don't have a vested interest in bigger government. And by that I mean, there are some minority groups whose progress has been made at the hands of big government, maybe not in a way that we've agreed with, but certain rights and certain privileges and certain abilities and things that have been eventually accrued to them did not begin with society handing them out. Government was needed in some places to enforce and then reinforce and then reinforce certain things. But when we're talking about a smaller government, it's absolutely essential that when we disagree on something, that it isn't a major issue. But she's so right that the left is trying to destroy conservatives, Republicans, the right, those values and whatever, because they must prevail because they look at it as though we would do the same. That if we got in power, all we would do is force everything on them. They look in that mirror, and that's what they're seeing, but they're projecting that onto us. Meanwhile, there are still elements on the right that we need to teach that leave us alone is a better way. And not nearly as many control freaks on the right, but there are some vocal control freaks on the right, and we should be messaging around that as often, I think, as we can, that diversity is good, that the differences of opinion are treasured and vaunted and hashed out, but because we want less government, it's less important to to dominate, to prevail every time. And that's part of that old establishment I was talking about here. That was their theory. It was dominate. It was predominate everything, every argument, every candidacy, every race. That's how we got some kingmakers in this area. But all that said, the cool thing, I think, that when we start talking about those diversity of views is we can take issues that wouldn't normally traditionally be seen as conservative issues and talk about them. This is the whole push about the sentencing, mandatory minimums, drug laws, and the punitive effect they have on the poor, things like that. There was a story I just read today about a woman who was locked up overnight because, or no, it was not overnight, it was more than overnight, it was several days, over a spoon they found in a car she was riding, and they were sure that this was meth on this spoon, meth residue. And tell them what it turned out to be, JD.
It was SpaghettiOs. It was SpaghettiOs. How do you screw that? How do you mess that up? It's SpaghettiOs. It's not meth. I mean,
right.
They're
oh my God,
so much better for you than SpaghettiOs. You should be able to figure that out.
I'm terrified now because I don't even know how, but one of my nephew's baby spoons was in the center console of my car for like years. And I could have gone to jail for that? Because,
you put a little baby powder, or baby formula on that spoon or something like that. A little oatmeal in the bottle, and you test it on the spoon to make sure it's not too hot. Yeah, it's going to look like something else, and they're going to lock you up. The way that we can take those issues of people that have been victimized by the system, by big government, by this, large net. We're going to put all these big net policies and attempt to, sweep it all up. The same way that we're getting these big net policies about intelligence gathering, where we're just going to sweep all this data up. When that is the case, when government has the ability to bring a SWAT team into your house, to shoot you on the street as you're in your car, any number of things that they can do, it is hugely important that we have really good ability to speak to principles about smaller government in that area too. Not just, hey, I'd like to pay less taxes. How about, hey, I'd like the cops to actually have proof before they do stuff to me, and if they have suspicion, I'd like them to process that pretty darn quick instead of letting me languish in jail until they figure out that my SpaghettiO-eaten self just left a spoon, and that's a proof that I'm a slob because I left it in my car, but not that I'm a meth dealer.
And to be honest, do we really want to expose the poor people who are eating SpaghettiOs? I mean,
I love
think about the social cost that this poor person has just been made to pay, because now people will know that.
Just like publicly branded as the SpaghettiOs eater.
The SpaghettiOs eater.
Considering the trans fat ban, the salt ban, the labeling issues, is it so far-fetched? Okay, tinfoil off, I swear.
Yes, you really
somebody reported her for eating SpaghettiOs, and she probably keeps the spoon in her car. Oh my God.
Has anybody seen Bloomberg in the past few days? I'm just asking.
Who knows? And now, of course, I want SpaghettiOs, and I don't think I have any in the pantry.
The kind
I'm
with the Franks,
Plus,
though,
Kroger's open 24 hours a day.
the Franks are better than the meatball ones.
Oh yeah, totally. They are so good. Love
what?
Frank.
What is this conversation I've been having? What are you? What are you people saying? This is horrible.
Squirrel.
No.
Oh, we just taught canned pasta to an Italian. Snap.
Not just an Italian that goes to Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. So, I mean, please now, let's get serious about these foods. There ought to be a law against SpaghettiOs, just SpaghettiOs, because clearly they are the worst possible thing. And really, I would have had no problem if the police had arrested her for possession of SpaghettiOs instead of suspicion of meth. Because, I mean, SpaghettiOs.
Because meth is cool, it's on TV, but SpaghettiOs, really?
Now, we were just talking about diversity among conservatives and how we accept it. You guys are really, really pushing it. Because somebody who doesn't tolerate my love for SpaghettiOs, I'm not sure that you and I have much in common anymore, JD.
Well, we're only talking about acceptance.
Yes, we don't actually practice acceptance. We just talk about it. You know.
Exactly.
I'm gonna push for a SpaghettiOs mandate that everyone has to eat 1 can of SpaghettiOs cold straight from the can every month.
Okay, now you just lost me. You cannot eat cold SpaghettiOs. That is wrong. You're doing it wrong.
I only went that far just to make JD hurl.
Well, no, this is something else it reminds me of. In the middle of the meth SpaghettiOs conversation, there's a woman who is a candy maker who has been making blue crystal meth candy and, you know, Heisenberg's finest sort of thing, just as a fun gag that she sells to adults only. But up in one school, kids have been getting their hands on it and talking about eating meth. And the school has stepped in, and there's people in the area calling for the council to put a ordinance out against this.
Fun?
Oh, my God.
Fun?
Well, we had candy
There's fun?
cigarettes when we were kids.
Exactly. We had candy cigarettes, and, you know, it didn't lead to my smoking. Something else entirely led to my smoking. But that's the thing, is we have to be able to use these evidences of ridiculous intervention in people's lives.
Yeah, we do.
And we need to make our side recognize their own ridiculous influences of government in people's lives.
Right. And we need to make sure that we are continually talking up this too much government in terms of government incompetence and lack of choice that you're always getting. Go, Andy.
I was just going to comment that actually what got Fishy started on smoking, she went the other way for gateway drugs. She started with crack. Worked her way down to smoking, which really I think makes you unique. Most people don't do that.
Well, and the candy cigarettes that I had when I was a kid, they didn't make me a smoker, but they did make me a chubby little girl. But that's because it was the candy part, not the cigarette part, that I liked.
I don't understand how these people can be so anti-fun, can be just so. I mean, seriously, if you're going to outlaw, if you're going to try and put some sort of ban on rock candy, which is what this is. I mean, insane. If you're going to put a ban on rock candy, are you also going to, because it has something to do with a TV show, because it has, you know, connotations, or it sort of reminds people of the meth on Breaking Bad? Are you also going to, I don't know, are you going to outlaw Scooby-Doo Pez dispensers? Are you going to get rid of Bertie Bott's every flavor jelly beans? Because I mean, it's so dumb. It's just absolutely asinine to me that this is a thing, that the people are actually doing this, because
Well, and it's part and parcel of the complete overreaction culture that we have. If one person could potentially possibly be damaged by something, it must be outlawed. There could possibly be a child at your school that has a horrible allergy to peanuts. So that means that no child can ever have peanuts anywhere near the school. Well, that's a ridiculous, unreasonable overreaction. If you have some condition that puts you so far out of the norm and that is a danger to your life, then it's really incumbent upon you to understand, right? If you know that you could die from a bee sting, it's incumbent upon you to carry an EpiPen.
Should be. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. I don't see any problem with that.
Well, that's also that tendency to govern toward the margins. We're going to try to bubble wrap everybody so that no one ever has anything bad ever happen to them. And 2 or 3 instances of something is how we will govern. That's how we have recalls of crazy things for crazy reasons, because 2 people got injured using something inappropriately, and now we can't have it anymore. That's governing
if
toward
it
the
saves
margins.
just one child.
One child. Yes.
But, open borders are cool. Yeah, and, well, sorry, didn't want to bring that up.
Where do you guys kind of come down on that in terms of at what point should people be able to simply make decisions that endanger themselves? To what degree?
I think that you should be able to kill yourself.
You have to also
Legally.
not be able to sue. We have to have the lawsuit. Before we can really be a libertarian society, we have to get rid of a lot of the lawyers, and we have to change our lawsuit policies, because we have a lot of people right now who make bad decisions for themselves, and then they will sue somebody else for the results of that bad decision. And we have juries who will award them large sums.
Great
Leslie
point.
with the Shakespeare solution.
What?
First thing, let's kill all the lawyers. You totally
Heck yeah.
said that. You totally said that.
Yep. Let's kill all the lawyers.
My answer to that, Andy, is I love reading the Darwin Awards website. Read it every year.
That's the perfect answer. Where do you come down on that? Well, I want to allow anybody to do anything as long as there's somebody there to film it and contribute to DarwinAwards.com.
My thought has always been to the point where if you were going to do something that's destructive to yourself and it costs me, then we need to have a talk about that. If you're going to overdose and end up in treatment, and the government is going to have to pay, the government ain't paying, I'm paying. I used to think a lot like that. I think I'm coming around to a different place generally, that there are some societal goods we need to do. There are some people who aren't able to take care of themselves or handle themselves in addictive situations. I don't know. It's not. I have addictive personality of a different type. It's not anything that's going to end me up in the sewer or bankrupt or anything like that. But for the most part, that end of your arm argument breaks down in a society in which we do care for people. We have that vast safety net for people who are doing foolish things, people who are taken, by circumstances and surprises. Everyone's willing to, provide a safety net for them. But the folks who are doing things to themselves and who have collateral damage that we're also paying for in the means of children that they have to support and the societal damage, those are good conversation questions, and a lot of conservatives feel that there ought to be more cold-hearted about that sort of thing. And the children of addicts or whatever that are damaged by all that should be left to the responsibility of the parents. I don't think it's as easy as where do you draw the line.
As a former liberal, the number one reason we wanted a massive safety net is not just so people would become addicted to it. People miss the point when that's part of it, but the main reason is this: if you have a safety net that covers all your bad decisions, that means all your bad decisions cost other people, which gives them the right to try to control your decisions. See, that's the whole reason for a big safety net, is so that you can control the populace. Now I can control every person and every choice they make, because every choice they make more and more costs other people because they have to pay to fix that choice.
Exactly, and we've accepted that as a society in general, and that's where I think Tea Party really was serious about saying, we need to make government smaller and smaller and smaller, and let people individually make decisions who to support and who not to about charity cases. But I'm afraid that that's so ingrained in our society now that it would be a bugger to pull out. Really, to undo that damage now. We've lived with it so long. No wonder Republicans get called cruel for wanting to take it back, because that's established now.
Well, and that's a good point. It basically, I love the Tea Party, but they want all that stuff removed immediately. That can't sell, and so somebody like Paul Ryan comes along with a plan that has a lot of government uses in it, but it helps people take the first step toward needing those things less, providing future steps. And then the Tea Party, of which I'm a part, rails on Ryan and calls him a rhino, and that he is, anti-constitution and all that, when what he's saying is no, society is exactly where Fishy just said it is. I have to move. I've got to get some first downs before I can get a touchdown. I got to move them a little.
Well, and when you think of that, it makes sense, because what do we say about people on, say, welfare that are taking in stuff? What do we say about them on food stamps? We want to limit what they can buy. We want to limit what they can take. We want to drug test them. There's your proof right there. Yeah, that sounds like all very good ideas, because yes, you're taking my money. I should have a say in whether or not you're doing the right things with it. I want to follow up on that and make sure my money's invested well. That's how it's been messaged on the right.
And it's been a debacle for a long time. And hopefully, now we have people who are trying to talk about it in the right way. We're trying to talk about it in the right way. We've had these discussions before, and we're going to continue to have them. I think that at the very least, we are contributing to the sort of going forward with the messaging in the conservative movement, and we're trying to video by video get these things out there and have people a little bit more aware of exactly how we need to go about shifting into conservative gear. We can't just make that hard shift from progressivism into conservatism. You just can't do it in one fell swoop. You're going to grind the gears. It's not something that's going to easily be done. So thankfully on the Refinery, that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to we'll have lots of clips from this video hopefully to help in that cause. Good enough there, Leslie?
Yeah, and that is going to bring us to an end of this week's show, because we'll have the opportunity to talk all about this next week, Tuesday at 8:30, when we come back to the Refinery, and we're 1 week closer to elections and
Picture series. Remember, you have an article.
Okay,
you've got
great.
Articles out.
That's true, self-promotion. I'm doing pretty much an article every day. I'm on episode 5 now of Make Change Happen, which is a series of blog posts about the Senate races, and I've broken down the candidates into the categories of where we need to focus attention and where we can ignore, because it's not enough just to read the horse race articles and read who's doing what. We can participate and make things happen. It's interesting to read that Mitch McConnell is probably going to win in Kentucky. Did you do anything to make that happen? Or if you read an article about, it's so scary that Georgia may not happen for Purdue, well, what are you doing to help Purdue? So I'm putting together information and posting a little bit about it every day that is hopefully going to be a resource and a call to action for people. So look for it on conservativeunion.net in the blog section,
Guys,
or wherever else.
I got to jump in for 1 second and just say I read through it, and it is outstanding, Leslie. I'm serious. It's one of the easiest to follow, most practical. Those kinds of things are generally totally intimidating to me. You know, you got to go do this, do that, march here, but wonderful. Great job.
Or it's long paragraphs, and you can plow through it and say, okay, based on the 12 paragraphs I've just read, I think there might be 3 races that are worth worrying about, and you can't really figure out what state do I care about, who do I call. So I'm trying to get that information together and make it easy.
I will say that I did not appreciate the paragraph that you had for New Jersey where it just said, screw New Jersey. I mean,
give it up, nobody cares. Yeah, it was hard
helpful.
to write that. It was hard to write.
Word, but yeah.
But I had to be true to myself, you know. And so, with a final screw New Jersey, that's it for the week. No, that's not at all what I wrote, people, by the way. It's not what I wrote. I will
But
see
you should totally go and try to find out whether or not she's telling the truth.
Absolutely.
Go read it.
You should read the series to find out what I wrote about New Jersey. And that's a wrap for this week. Bye, y'all. Thanks, everybody, for watching.